Well, Schultzy, we're back. It's the 200 Cops, mate. How are you?
Yeah, good, mate. Yourself? Mate, this is
Oh,
a
no.
pretty exciting day today, I think.
Yeah, no, pretty good. We were having a bit of a chat beforehand. And, we've spoken to Bob Rennie now. We've interviewed him, and yeah, we're sort of moving through it. We've got a few more plans coming up, but the request we keep getting is surely you would have seen heaps of funny stuff and drunks and all that sort of thing. So we had a bit of a chat, and we thought we'd come up with the funniest stuff we'd seen by people on the grog. So it's the old Dutch
Yeah.
courage. So what we're going to do is sort of go back and forth and talk about the carry-ons of people in licensed premises and outside and what goes on and how some people just maybe shouldn't have a tipple.
Yeah, that's
So,
right.
mate, I've got a couple from a couple of different things. A couple from I worked in City Safe. I mean, we'll kick off with yours first, but I think I
Yep.
might go a couple from the old City Safe days in Darwin City, and yeah, we'll go from there, mate.
Yeah,
So,
mate,
yeah,
yeah, not a problem. I was, mate, I am a little bit bloody shady this morning because drinking with Bob Rennie, but I'm definitely set to go, and I'm going to tell you a story. This is early on in the piece when I was a cop in Catherine, and this is usually one of my go-to to get the crowd laughing and all that sort of thing, and I call it the tasering.
the infamous tasering.
Yeah, exactly. So what happened was I was driving around. I was with I won't mention his name because I think he's still on the job. But anyway, he's a really funny bloke. And we're travelling around East Side Catherine, and we get a call over the radio that there's a woman walking down the main street. She's got a 6-month-old in one arm, and she's got a machete in the other, and she's walking to Kalana Community to kill her husband. So anyway,
That sets an epic scene, Schultzy.
So, I mean, if you're listening along here at home, you're sitting there going, well, how the hell do you handle this? So anyway, and one thing we always do when you go into these jobs is we risk assess, I suppose, and on how we're going to handle it. So if then thinking. And anyway, so as we're going along, we're driving down there, and old mate's just flooring it. Anyway, we're getting down there, and I turned to my offsider and I said, mate, how are we going to handle this? He goes, well, you taser her, I'll catch the baby. Not gone all right. So that was our risk
Good
assessment.
plan.
So anyway, we get down there, and she's actually walking across a high level bridge at this stage, and luckily somebody's taken the kid off her, so she's only carrying the machete, but she's walking on the footpath over the bridge. So Duggo, if I've said his name now, bloody hell, Duggo.
So he won't mind, mate. He's a good fella.
No, he won't. Anyway, because I can't say it without saying his name. Anyway,
yeah.
He stops in the middle of the bridge, and anyway he jumps out. I've got the taser, and he jumps out and he jumps over the railing onto the footpath part. So we've stopped the traffic. This is a major highway, and we've stopped the traffic going both ways. And anyway, and he's standing 10 meters back, and he's trying to talk to her and calm her down and all that sort of thing. And anyway, she's not really listening. And in the end, she sits there, goes, well, if you're not going to effing help me, and she lifts up the machete. And Duggo turns to me as calm as anything, goes, light her up, Schultzy. So anyway, and he goes, anyway, so I fire the taser, but I'm on a slight diagonal to her, like I'm coming up from her, behind her on the side. And anyway, so one barb, as you know, one barb goes straight where your dot is, but the other one actually bounced off her backpack. And so it didn't connect. Anyway,
I'll just explain it, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'll just explain it because
You're
people
right.
won't really understand. So a taser fires 2 barbs out of it. Those barbs
Yep.
fly forward. One flies basically straight. The other one drops off on a slight angle to create spacing. So when it impacts the body, it goes in with these straight spikes that have little barbs on them, like straightened fish hooks.
Yep.
They go in about 5 millimeters into the body, and they create a direct current. And that current
Yep.
Is what works. So that's how they're 19 times a second, very high voltage,
Yep.
very low amps. So yeah, I
Yep.
just thought I'd set the scene so people understand what you're getting from.
Yep. And I think it's 50,000 volts or something at 0.002
Yeah, it's bloody high.
amp, so it's definitely got some kick in it. And anyway, so of course she's actually thought she's been shot because it hits with an impact, that little barb, and so she's half like basically stunned. In that moment, I've sit there and gone, oh shit, I've stuffed up here. So, but I didn't turn the taser off. It cycles for 5 seconds. So I've grabbed hold of the cartridge to change to put another cartridge on, and I've tasered my bloody self in the process. And this is in front of, I don't know, there would have been 100 people around. because of course they're all drawn to this scene. And anyway, and rest in peace, good old Brett Meredith. He was a shift sergeant that night, and he saw it.
Yep.
So he was quite happy to pass that back up along the troops as well. And
Oh,
anyway,
yeah.
Duggo did the best front takedown I've ever seen. Jeez, it was an absolute ripper, and we actually then cuffed her and put her in the cage and all that sort of thing, and took her back to the station. But you were on shift that night. And I remember getting back to the station, and you are sitting out the back. As soon as we get out of the car, you go, hold on, I need you to drop that. Don't do it, or I will taser myself.
Yeah, that's
And
right.
I got paid
Yeah.
out shitloads for that one.
Oh, and rightly so, Schultzy. Yeah. No, the old don't do a Schultzy and grab the taser while it's still cycling. Drop the weapon, or I will commit self-harm.
Oh, mate, I'll tell you what, it gives a zap too.
Oh, yeah. So the worst thing about that would be is that you wouldn't be able to let go. It would grab your hand, and your hand, all the muscles in your hand would contract.
Just contract onto it, yeah.
You just have to ride the lightning until it stops.
And we have got tasered. For anybody actually listening, tasers came out when we first went to the college, and we were the crash test dummies before it actually got released.
Oh,
so,
we were.
yeah.
Actually, I just have to tell a quick story about you as well, because that wasn't the first time you'd received a belt from a taser, had you, Schultz?
No.
So,
No.
I remember we were getting a demonstration of how you have to have the two prongs have to connect in order to create a circuit for it to cycle properly and actually have the effect on the person. Basically, It causes all the muscles to spasm, and you have no control over it, and it causes a lot of pain, and you fall over, and you can't resist it, you can't fight against it.
Yeah.
Anyway, so my good old mate Schultzy is he's going to be a demonstration of what happens when one barb misses. So I remember you stood on the mat. This is when we were at recruit college at the college. So you're standing there with your arms out to the side, and no one was holding on to you, because normally what happens if they're going to make a direct shot in the back, like a lot of us got, then you'll have two people holding your arms, and they'll gently let you down on a mat while you're receiving the 5 seconds of current, which is, trust me, the worst 5 seconds of your bloody life.
It definitely is.
So the instructor turned the taser on an angle, so as one barb would miss you and the other barb would hit you, he was then going to show how you can run forward and complete the circuit by actually do what's called a drive stun. So actually drive the front of the taser into them, and it will complete the circuit. So that was what it was supposed to be like. What happened was, one taser hit me mate Schultzy right in the back, and the other one hit him directly in the elbow. So he's basically been chicken winged by this taser with no support and gone face first into the mat. And I remember your head had curled down. So your body was Sydney Harbour bridging on the mat. And we've all just gone, oh! And anyway, we wrote it out and we thought, that's it, we've killed him. And anyway, he gets up, laughs his ass off and goes, I thought you were meant to miss. And I remember the instructor went, I was.
And that hurt too, because the barb hit right on the bone on the elbow. And look, we'll give a shout out to Mr. John Penny, who's passed on recently.
Yeah,
Unfortunately,
poor old John
was
Penny.
a
Only
top
very
bloke.
recently, yeah.
Yeah, he was probably one of the best cops that I reckon I knew in the force. A big shout out and rest in peace, mate.
He was a very, very nice fella, and he was very, very competent. And he was a bit of an inspiration early on at the college as well. And
definitely,
I had a bit to do with him through the years, and it was pretty sad to hear that earlier this year. Only a few weeks ago, probably a month ago.
Yep.
Yeah. So anyway, that was a bit of a shame, but mate, we'll move on. I always like talking about the crap that drunks get up to in the street. I mean, everyone can relate to having a night out on the town and sort of talking about the stupid things people get up to on the grog. Well, imagine being out there sober, and look, being a police officer in the when you're policing those entertainment precincts can be a bit daunting. Like, you're dealing with a lot of fights and stuff like that. So that's the business side of things. One thing that I used to like in the Northern Territory, we had a unit based out of Darwin City called City Safe, and the role of that unit was basically, that was your job. You were looking after anything in the licensed premises, looking after your drunks in pubs and stuff like that. So it's kind of the social order side of things, but a little bit more. So you're more dealing with your people who've been kicked out of pubs and just being a pain in the bum in the street. So it's relevant to every jurisdiction. So you could do that job really, really seriously, or you could do it with a bit of a laugh. And I think we did it well. We used to roll around four up in a VW bongo van. We used to call it the VW van. And there'd be four of us in there. We had plenty of weaponry. We had we had pepper sprays, we all had tasers, all that sort of thing. But we also had like an advanced first aid kit, so we were pretty a handy little crew to have around. Anyway, what we used to do, we used to play along a lot with the drunks because everyone's just out having a good time. The vast majority of people are being fine. They're having a laugh. They're a bit frivolous, but that's all right. And anyway, I'll start it off. I've got a couple of quick stories. So there was one night there was a pretty good mood in town. It wasn't too bad. It was probably coming up on midnight, and we hadn't. I think we'd had a couple of removals, and we've just sort of come, mate, jump in a taxi, and there hadn't been a problem. Anyway, we're driving along, and I see this thing in the road. So for anyone who knows Darwin, we're heading along Mitchell Street, sort of past the Mitchell Centre, with Monsoons and the pubs, Wisdoms, and those bars on our left-hand side, and the Mitchell Centre on our right-hand side. So heading that way, and anyway, I could see this. I'm driving, or in the front seat anyway, and I could see this what looked like a person on the road, but they were doing the worm up the road. So that's where you sort of bounce up and you rock from their body. And anyway, he's being cheered on by all the crowds. And anyway, we get up behind him, probably 20 metres behind him, and I put the red and blues on just for a bit of fun. And everyone, heaps of hundreds of people outside these bars, because he's been busted by the cops. Anyway, he stands up and turns around, and we go, no, keep going. The whole crowd, yeah! So everyone's cheering and carrying on. So this fella gets down and keeps doing the worm until he gets to the intersection of Mitchell Street, and I can't remember the other street there, but it's basically the main intersection in Darwin. So anyway, he does the intersection it does the worm right up to the red light, gets out, comes around, and I mean, he wasn't hurting anyone. There was no traffic. It was, not a problem. So we sort of played along with it. Anyway, we get out of the car and he comes up. We give him a high five, all the rest, and we just say, all right, it was good fun, all the rest of it. Just stay off the road, you'll be right. And anyway, the crowd's all cheering because they thought it was great fun. We turn the red and blues off and off we go. So up until that point, nothing else had really gone wrong. But we'd sort of set the mood that we were having fun with people. We'd been sort of, high-fiving people down the street and all this sort of thing. Anyway, then we do get a call that a fella's been kicked out of one of the pubs. I think it was Discovery, further down the other side. And he was out the front. He was a bit aggressive, but he's also just drunk. He's just an idiot, just some local. Anyway, so we get down there, and by this stage, he's got his shirt off, and he wants to fight the bouncers. And we turn up then, and we turned up, but another unit had turned up, and there were two girls in the other unit. And I can't remember who got there first. I think we got there, and they got there at the same time. We get out. Anyway, the girls come over, and anyway, this fella takes his strides off as well. So now he's standing back from us, and he's sort of a bit aggressive. So we're just talking to him, but he gets it off, and he takes hold of everything he owns and gets a little bit excited. So we're standing in the main street of Mitchell Street with heaps of people watching, with a naked white man, very aroused at this point. And it's like, what are we doing? It's like, that's it, champ, you're coming, you're gone. Anyway, so we have to grab this very naked man, being very careful not to get attacked with the weapon he had in his possession at the time. And so anyway, we drop him to the ground, which would have been fairly sensitive by the time we get him there and handcuffed and all the rest. So his clothes are on the ground. I think we grabbed his clothes and we throw him in the back of the cage. He's naked as the day he was born. And anyway, off we go to the watch house. We get to the watch house and we go and tell the story to him. Go, we got to get this goose out of the back. I just need to warn you that he's armed. And they're like, oh, what do you mean he's armed? I was like, no, just all right. Just trust me. He's packing an erection and he's not afraid to use it by the looks. So anyway, we open the cage and this clown's still having a great old time, thinks it's hilarious. We drag him out, drag him into the reception area and process him in. He's not very cooperative, but that, it is what it is. He's under control by this stage. We made him get some strides on. Anyway, into the cells he goes. We go out and continue on with our night, and we come back, and we had a few more arrests just for little things, drunken idiots not leaving pubs, and then not taking the advice to get a taxi. So we gave him a bed for the night. And anyway, no major issue. We're back at the watch house, and the watch house keeper's like, oh yeah, thanks for your present earlier on. And we go, oh, that would be our aroused friend, is it? Yeah. And he said he's currently in a cell by himself, and if you go and have a look, you'll see why. I said, oh, right, here we go. So I walk down the little hallway in the watch house. There's an overwhelming smell of human feces. And I look up at the wall, and for anyone who's worked in any custodial setting, so our corrections friends, and anyone who's the watch house keepers Australia-wide, they'll be somewhat familiar with the term bronzing up. So our little mate's got in the cell by himself and thought he'd bronze up. So what that means is he's taken a crap on the floor, picked it up, and used it as paint all over the glass in the perspex in the glass in the watch house, all over the walls. The smell's absolutely terrible. We're not going in there. There's no way in hell he can sleep it off. And I thought, geez, he's just the gift that keeps on giving, isn't he? So we walk out. And anyway, the next morning, everyone sort of gets released at about 6 in the morning, and especially for those minor sort of offences where you're only really going to get an infringement notice. And I think we just he ended up with about $1,500 worth of fines just in a ticket. And anyway, apparently he's come to the next day, and we sort of missed him. I didn't see him get released, but the watch house keeper gave me a full rundown. So as they've released him, he wanted to make a complaint that he'd been seriously assaulted. Someone has covered him in feces. And he's like, mate, that was you. Oh, I wouldn't do that. Anyway, so yeah, well, you did. And he wanted to have a shower, so I think the boys let him have a shower before he left. But talk about a biohazard. So, yeah, that was, if you can't handle your OP rum, maybe don't drink it.
Mate, you've just reminded me, and you started off with the guy doing the worm. Now, I recall when I was down in Tennant Creek one day that I was doing that on the dance floor, and then you thought you would attempt it. We were definitely 3 sheets to the wind at the time, and you want to tell the people what happened that night, Damo?
Well, it started off okay. So we are talking about the Dutch carriage and all the rest of it. So we're having a bit of a dance and carrying on. We were a lot younger back then. And anyway, it's getting fairly late. We're having a dance, and the whole town's there. So not just police, we're hanging out with everyone. Everyone hung out with each other in Tennant Creek. It was a good social scene. Anyway, someone was having a bit of a dance off, and I thought in all my bloody wisdom that I could pull off a worm on the dance floor. And I did. I sort of did. It would have looked pretty terrible, but I thought it was pretty good at the time. So I do the worm one time, and that was fine. I did a pretty good job. Anyway, someone's there going, they all had a laugh, and then do it again. So I went to do a second one, but I overestimated my upper body strength, and I probably just went a little bit high. And anyway, I came down really hard on my face, like straight down on my face, and I smashed my jaw into the ground, and it was just a hard wooden dance floor. And I remember my jaw went back, so it hurt near my ears, but it also bloody massive impact on my chin.
Yeah.
Anyway, I was that. At the time I had plenty of anaesthetic on board, so it wasn't too bad at the time. But I got up and I must have busted my lip, and there's blood running everywhere. And anyway, everyone's going, oh, thinking like, bloody this idiot copper's just killed himself. Yeah. So anyway, patched me up, no big deal, back into it. Woke up the next day and I couldn't talk, I couldn't eat, couldn't do anything. So I'd properly wipe myself out. So that's the last time I'll do the worm, and it was the last time I did the worm, and it'll be the last time I ever do it again. But my little British mate, I think I forgot to say, the fellow who did it in Mitchell Street was a little British backpacker. And my little British mate, he was all over it. He did the worm for about probably 25, 30 metres, straight up the middle of Mitchell Street.
That's outstanding. Oh dear, mate. It's actually, and talk about the Dutch carriage, mate. I've got it. It's not overly funny, but I suppose it is now when you look at it. And we call them all cage tough guys. As soon as you close the cage, you're all I'll fight you and all that sort of stuff. Yep. When you get someone in there, and anyway, I had
Perspex Warriors.
Perspex Warriors. Yeah, that's exactly right. Anyway, I was training a new female probie at the time, and this was her first shift, and it was an evening shift. Anyway, we've locked up this guy, and anyway, we've put him in the cage, and he goes, "I'm going to find you out of uniform, and I'm going to beat the shit out of you." And I've just gone, "I had a shit
that old
night." Anyway, yeah, exactly. Anyway, so what I've done is I've actually taken my belt off, handed it to my probie, and gone, "All right, son, I'm out of uniform. Let's go." And he couldn't get to the back of up to the front of the cage as fast as he could, because he goes, no, I didn't mean it. I said, don't say it then.
Don't say it, champ. Actually, it's funny, a little segue for that sort of thing and how sometimes you might play along. So in Aboriginal culture and out in the communities especially, you sort of got to show a bit of pride. Like you need to, you show courage and all the rest of it. So there was this young bloke who we were locking up for something. He was just a drunken thing. It was nothing major. And he wasn't a bad kid. He's sort of coming along, but he needs to sort of show that he's pretty tough. And I said, he's going, oh, family there. I said, no, it's all right, mate. You just carry on and start swearing and yelling. No big deal, no trouble. And he goes, and he's swearing and getting into us, and the crowd's yahooing and sort of playing up to the fact that, he's, look how tough he is. He's still cheeky with the coppers and all the rest of it. And he was just, we were playing along with him. We put him in the back of the cage, closed the door, and he goes, thanks, constable. We're like, you're right, mate. All good.
You just remind me of another one. I remember I was working with Dingle, good old Jason Dingle. Big shout out to him. He retired recently, actually, or
resigned. Yeah,
police,
you don't retire till you're a properly old man.
Well, that's true. Yeah, well, mind you, he's probably done enough work in his life to be retirement age, I reckon. He's
a lot younger than he looks.
And he was a great guy to work with. And I remember we rocked up in Ryan Park there one day, and anyway, these two Aboriginals, one was a Warlpiri, I think the other one's from Barunga community. And the Warlpiris are big people. Anyway, this guy was he was blind drunk, and they're having this fight in the park. Anyway, the big Warlpiri is definitely losing. Like, he's twice the size of this other guy, but he just can't coordinate anything because he's so drunk. Anyway, and this is some of the ways like you can actually de-escalate a situation. And anyway, so I've actually walked up. He goes, no, it's all honour. It's honour, Ben. He knew me. And anyway, I said to him, look, mate, you're getting your ass kicked, all right? I said, how about we'll lock you up. You can turn it on a bit, and and all that sort of thing. We'll save you. You can come back next week and have a fight with him when you're sober, mate. It'll be fun. But he goes, oh, okay. Yeah, so anyway, we grab him and take him on. He goes, oh, you copper pricks, and C words and everything, turns it on and be, oh, come on, son. Anyway, got him in there, and we took him up to the wash house. He said, oh, thanks for that. He said, I'm asleep, I'll sober up, and I'll go and find him tomorrow. I said, all right.
We'll sort him out. Yeah, no, definitely. That's the go. So I've got another one that was, we found it hilarious. We had a bloke. It's very common for someone to go out in the town, and especially people who won't necessarily drink all the time, but, and everyone knows you have a big night every now and then, and you just get to the point where you're written off. And anyway, this one night we find this chap just asleep on the street, and he's a fairly well dressed sort of bloke in sort of business clothes, but he's just passed out cold, just on the footpath, just out like a light. Anyway, we sort of get him a little bit woken up, but he can't speak. He can't tell us who he is. We're like, mate, have you got any friends with you? And he's just not talking. So anyway, we'll just take him back to the watch house, and we'll see if we can find someone for him to go. Like he had no wallet, had no phone, had no nothing on him. Anyway, we take him in, and we couldn't work out who he was. So he's basically just in the cell, and we're keeping a close eye on him. Anyway, he sort of came to, so we brought him back out. And this is like 10, 15 minutes after we've lodged him. We're trying to do inquiries as to who he might be. Anyway, he comes out, and he just doesn't talk. He's not talking, but we kind of start thinking that he doesn't speak English. We were thinking he's like from the European continent or something like that. Anyway, there's a big Greek community in Darwin, and there's a couple of people in the police force who can speak Greek. Anyway, one of the auxiliaries in there that night could actually speak Greek and Italian. So he's in there and he starts a Greco, and I don't know the language very well, but I just know Greco means are you Greek sort of thing. And he's sort of shaking his head like, I don't understand. And anyway, he goes, oh, you're from Europe? And he sort of nodded like he was from Europe. And anyway, is he Italiano? I was like, Italian? He's like, no, Espanol? He's like, no. He sort of, anyway, this went on for, a couple of minutes. Anyway, he goes, mate, you're not from England, are you? He goes, oh, Christ, no, I'm not from fucking England. Big mad Scotsman. Anyway, we all just absolutely lost it and hitting the ground, just laughing our heads off. And anyway, it was a bit of a shame, a bit of a letdown, because we really wanted this bloke to be a really good bloke. Like, we thought, come on, just be a funny bugger. And anyway, and then he started getting cranky, and it's like, what a disappointment. We wanted you to be a good fella. Anyway, and he wasn't. He was a bit of a knob, really. But so anyway, he wouldn't really tell us who he was. He hadn't really committed any offences. He was just drunk. And in the end, we said, do you want to make a phone call? And I think he rang his mates, and they came and got him. And he basically just sat in the watch house until they turned up, and then he was released from custody. That was it. But it was just the build-up. We thought, where's he from? And we're trying to. We all think we're so smart by trying to predict where he was from. And not from bloody England. But I mean, this sort of stuff happens all the time. It's very funny
Oh,
stuff happens in watch houses.
it is some of the stuff, and as we're sticking to the watch house, I can't claim this story, although however I was there, and this is poor old Jason Dingle again. I don't think he'll ever recover from this one. And we had this see, a large Aboriginal woman in the cells, and she was a regular.
I know this one.
Yeah.
I know this one. This is not good. Oh.
And anyway, he so they've got her in, and she's basically I can't remember. We got a female officer to pat her down and all that sort of thing, and all this sort of stuff. And the female officers always.
The female officer searched her thoroughly. I'll just throw that.
Yes.
In.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. And anyway, we've so then we've basically taken her to the cells, and we put her in the drunk take, where there's a number of other drunks in there. Anyway, about 5 minutes later, we hear this out of a can opening, and then we hear the other bloody mates go, "Hey, she's got alcohol in here." Anyway, Dingle, not thinking, basically goes in there, snatches this BB can out of her hand, and he sits there and he goes and like throws it out, and he goes, "How did you go?" It's up the vagina.
Oh, just terrible.
And Dingle was not wearing gloves at the time either.
Oh, just a rough show. To the listeners of the podcast of Two Ordinary Cops, I do apologise for my offsiders' previous remarks. I remember that. That was, but he did not live that down for years. I don't think he's lived it down yet.
He didn't.
So you couldn't wash your hands enough.
I said, mate, you'd almost cut your hand off, wouldn't you?
Oh, just rancid. So, yes, look, some very funny things happened in those drunk tanks, and like, just the number of times that all kinds of, oh god, we could go on forever. And some of them people probably don't find some of them funny, but bloody hell, we did.
Is it? And like for everybody listening, and it's not like these watch houses. Well, definitely by the time we left, they had some really good video surveillance. Like it was excellent. Like the CCTV, you could hear a pin drop as well in that in the watch house. They were just phenomenal. And such. I mean, when we first started, they had the old VHS tapes. Remember?
Oh yeah, you had to swap the tapes out. If you forgot to
exactly,
do it, it just wasn't recorded.
And they used to do it on long play, so that way they could get like 6 hours out of it or something. And you had to remember to change them over, otherwise it wouldn't recall. And I remember I arrested this one female this time, and we got her down. I think I was I don't remember who I was working with, and might have been Benny Rossiter at the time. And big shout out to him. He was great to work with, but. So we've arrested her for shop stealing, or stealing from a shop, and anyway we got back to the watch house, and anyway, like Benny's doing the paperwork inside. I said, I'll just do the 140 caution on her, So I basically opened the cage up, and I've got it open where I'm holding the cage in one hand, and I've got the recorder in the other. And now this lovely woman had a bit of a history of going crazy. And there is some very disturbing stories which I won't share on here because they're just terrible. But this one night, anyway, so I'm sitting there, and she's suddenly, as I'm cautioning her, she's grabbed hold of the cage. So I've got hold of the outside. She's grabbed it and started smashing her head into the cage. Problem is, I'm just going, holy shit! So I got to like restrain her and all that sort of thing, and we get her in. And we said, oh, shit, this isn't good. So we go back and actually have a look at the video footage. But because it was in long play, it actually looked like I was slamming the cage into her head because it's segmented. Yeah. And you look, if anybody that isn't used to it, you never really want custody incidents.
No.
They're not good fun.
No. No, it's definitely not worth your time. No. We like to keep it all as peaceful as possible, but they're not peaceful places.
No, that's exactly right. And they have a smell to them, the watch house.
They do.
Yeah.
And you can't get rid of that smell. So they get cleaned very thoroughly. And bleached out. They get cleaned with bleach. Like
pressure cleaner,
everything. So they get very thoroughly, professionally cleaned every single day. But you can't get rid of that smell. So the smell in the watch houses in Darwin, Catherine, Tennant Creek to an extent, but Alice Springs, oh my God. You walk into that watch house and it smells like alcohol, like that. You know that smell of alcohol in the air?
Yep.
It smells like ethanol. It smells like rotten. Think of the most disgusting foot odor you can possibly imagine, and just
Yeah.
body odor. It just stinks, absolutely stinks. And the thing is, once you work in there for a while, like on a shift, you get used to the smell and you can't smell it anymore. But everyone else can. It
Mm.
comes in like, oh god, it stinks
Oh,
in here.
jeez.
Anyway,
Yeah.
I remember my wife in the early days because we used to be watch house keepers back when we first started, and I always
Yep.
wore my uniform to and from work when I first started. But we'd I'd go home and I'd walk in and give my wife a kiss, good morning, or good, when I'd been at shift, and she'd go, "Oh, you
Yep.
reek," and it was
Yep.
just the air in the watch
It
house. It just
it
gross.
it just gets ingrained in your clothes.
Oh yeah,
It's
yeah,
absolutely terrible. I remember
yeah.
like one day, like Dingle and I were actually walking towards and I'm not sure what happened inside, but it was like a wall. We were still 10 meters away from the watch house, and it was like this wall of smell. Like you couldn't fight
Oh
through it.
yeah,
I said, geez, I almost had to pull my Glock. It was that offensive. Like it was
yeah.
just terrible.
So So, mate, you never had the privilege of serving in Alice Springs, and trust
No.
me, that was by far the worst watch house. Alice Springs watch house was a whole new level of stench.
Yeah.
And I'll quickly go on. I know you want to give a few shout outs, but so some of the stories from Alice Springs, we had people because it gets very cold in winter in Alice. It's quite high, quite a high elevation. And you get that bitterly cold desert freezing. So I mean, down to -5, -6 overnight and colder. So as a result, a lot of people who sleep rough, they will put heaps and heaps of clothes on and not take them off for weeks. And anyway, if they are to come into police custody, well, we take belts off, we take any excess clothing off because it's fairly warm. Like the watch houses are kept relatively warm. And anyway, we take their shoes and socks off, and that's where the overwhelming stench comes from. And I do apologise once again. We're going to tell you some pretty gross stuff here. I've seen it, and I know other people have seen a lot worse, but I've seen socks come off, and the socks mightn't have come off for 5 or 6 weeks,
Yep.
and it's almost like the skin has grown through the actual material. Like it's
Yeah.
just disgusting. So, like, imagine the smell of a rotten. Everyone knows what stinky foot smells like. Multiply that by just millions, and that's how bad these feet smell. And we'll peel that off, and that smell doesn't go away. So we'll throw these rancid bloody. So it's still their property. So it's not like we can just dispose of them, even though
Yep.
they're a biohazard. We put them in their property. So the property little storeroom, you get when you go into custody, you're given a paper bag that all your stuff goes into. It all gets recorded on the computer, and then it all gets returned to you when you're released from custody. And the smell that comes out of that property room is
Oh
just
yeah.
terrible.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm sorry if anyone was eating while you've listened to that, but you've just got to. Words don't do it justice. You've got to see it to believe it.
No.
It's
Oh,
just out of control.
you've just reminded me of one as well, and I'll wrap this up quickly. I'll do the shout outs in another one
In a
because this
minute,
one's probably gonna it's not this is one we're doing to have a backup, so to speak. But we brought this one guy into the watch house, and we brought him in. He's wearing a shirt, and through the shirt I can actually see like it's a scab through the shirt,
Oh,
and like we're going, oh, we need to take that off and blah blah, and he goes, oh, I can't take it off. It's basically what's happened is this scab. So he's obviously been wearing this shirt for weeks, and I mean weeks and weeks and weeks, and he's had this graze, and it's basically the blood scab has actually gone through the shirt, but then his
yeah.
skin has actually started to grow, so the shirt's attached to him by his skin.
Oh,
And we had to take him up to the hospital. Like it just like, and these are the sort of people you're getting into these watch houses.
yeah,
Like,
yeah. And just for those who we won't have a clue, like when people do go into custody, all of major centres now have got custody nurses. So they all get checked not only through the police computer system for warrants and stuff like that, but they also get checked through the health system. So they'll have a health
yep,
review done by the custody nurse, and the custody nurse can pull the trigger. Anyone can pull the trigger straight away and say, "No, hospital."
yep,
Obviously, there's been a number of deaths in custody for whatever reason, and we're not really going to go into that. But um, you do go through almost a little health, like you almost have a little medical every time you come into custody. So
yeah,
for people thinking we just grab people and chuck them in cells, it's not at all. Especially, we will do that where someone's behaviour makes it dangerous for them to come in contact with the custody nurse. But
yeah,
pretty well, that's a very small minority of people. The vast majority of people, once they're in custody, they sort of chill out a bit, and they especially cooperate more with the custody nurse who's nothing to do with police, and is
yeah,
only there for their welfare. So yeah, we do check that. So something like that would get flagged immediately, and they'd go straight
Yep.
up. And generally, the SOP or the standard operating procedure was that we'd call an ambulance for them. And just given the nature of how the world is, that ambos are pretty hard to come by because they're just so busy. So we would often take, especially if someone was, they're not that bad, they just need to get checked out. We'd take them up to hospital in the police car quite a bit. And sometimes, depending on what they're in custody for, we'd release them from custody to the hospital to get treated, and just
Yep.
go. There's no, we can proceed. We can bring people before the court. But there's other means, especially for minor offending. We don't have to keep people in custody. If you're in there for serious matters and you have to get remanded in custody, that's different. But quite often we just go, no, look, he's got medical issues. We'll give him a notice to appear or some other thing or an infringement notice and release them, and that was it.
Yep.
They go into the hospital and get treated.
Yeah. It's mate. I've just got one last one. Yeah, as you're talking about that in deaths in custody, and for the people actually listening in, we are not locking up the healthiest people in the world. All right,
No.
these people already have outlying, underlying whatever you say it, conditions, health conditions, and all that sort of thing. This one guy, and this wasn't this guy didn't actually have a health condition, but he was stumbling down the street and like really blind drunk. Anyway, so we've actually put him in the cage and taken him up to the watch house to sleep it off. And by the time he was stumbling when we got him, by the time we actually got to the watch house, this guy was completely out. Like he'd actually collapsed like onto the floor of the cage, and he was complete. You couldn't rouse him at all. There was no response whatsoever. Anyway, what we've done is we've just gone straight to the hospital. So we've basically licensed sirens up to the hospital to get this guy, because that was before we actually had a nurse in the cells. And anyway, and we took him up there and dropped him off, and like they came out, had to put him in a wheelchair, and we got him in there, and we said, all right, well, we'll just leave him with you guys. But they rang us up about half an hour later and said, what was that guy like? They had to pump his stomach. They said if you were 5 minutes later, he would have been dead.
Yeah.
He said, and it was just lucky, quick thinking from us, and otherwise, that would have been another death in custody, and it's terrible. What happened is he'd seen us coming and sculled basically a 40 ounce or half of 40 ounce of rum when he saw us coming, because he wanted to keep on drinking, and that was the result. So we got lucky there.
Oh, and mate, that happens quite a bit. So there are people, obviously, as we've spoken about previously. I've been a coroner's connie in Alice Springs and investigated matters where we've just found people dead in the street, and quite often the cause of death can't be really determined, or it may be that acute alcohol intoxicity, acute alcohol intoxication. Sorry, so they might have, and we can take a blood sample from, especially when they've been dead for a little while. You can take a blood sample from inside their I can't remember the name. There's a big vein. I think it's the inferior vena cava, a big vein that runs down the inside near your spine, and the blood.
Geez, that's a bit professional, mate.
Hey, mate, I only look stupid. So we'd take. I mean, the forensic pathologist would take a blood sample from there, and we'd test it for all kinds of things. But alcohol was one of them. And I remember one of the readings we got back was a blood alcohol concentration of about 0.62. From a deceased person. So that person's poisoned themselves with alcohol. So, but they weren't in police custody. They were found dead in the street. This is in Alice. And, I mean, the number of those people would, with similar sort of readings would come into custody. And you've got to be Johnny on the spot with people like that. You've really got to monitor that. And, I mean, there's examples where people have come into custody and have died in the cells because they've just been so drunk that they've died in the cell for that reason. And then because they've died in a police cell, that's death in custody. And I know a few police officers who went through. There was a 2009 the Briscoe matter in it's public
Briscoe,
record, the Briscoe coronial in Alice Springs. I know that a lot of those coppers they never fully recovered from that experience. They were treated like murderers. And we're not here to go into the inquest and all. I mean, it's very easy to sling mud at people and all the rest of it. Those coppers that night, all they wanted to do was do their job. They weren't trying to hurt anybody, and this fella's died in custody, and they've basically been accused of killing him. I mean, he had a fair old crack at it himself with the amount of alcohol, and we're not here to we're not, we're not going to go into it, but that's what you're dealing with.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, that's exactly right, mate.
mm,
And like I'm just thankful that we got that guy at the hospital and because we noticed it, you know. But
yeah.
there was a number of changes that came around after the Briscoe death in custody,
Oh
and
yeah, yeah.
and I think, oh look, you know, we definitely got better at what we did, and it was just a bit of a learning curve, I think. But yeah, I mean, it's just an unfortunate series of events, isn't it? Really?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah,
Yeah.
but yeah, mate. Yeah, it's almost we all love a drink. I mean, me and you love a drink more than most, but
Yep.
it's the old. Just remember that someone has to deal with you. If you're going to write yourself off and make a clown of yourself in the street, you're
Yep.
going to get dealt with. And
Yeah.
if it is what it is. And we were just doing our job, and yeah, some very very funny things happened, and yeah, I mean it's a GD's coppers 101, the old dealing with drunk people. So
Oh, definitely.
just a little,
Anyway, mate,
just a little
we
insight.
probably should finish this one up. We're up to 40 minutes already, and we were wondering.
Yeah,
Sometimes you look at the clock and you're sitting there going, "Shit, how are we going to talk for half an hour?" And then we could just keep on going now, but we'll finish it up, mate.
yeah, mate. So it's the two ordinary cops. We'll sign off for today. We'll talk to you next week.
Yeah, we'll see you then. Bye.